of macrovival and computers. With the reopening plan that's coming up, we've been open and I'm actually interested in the kind of protocols that are being recommended for cleanliness of the shop, because it's the things that we've just had to come up with ourselves. The other thing that I have in mind is with the potential reopening for City Hall and other facilities, where we're going to see public restrooms at some point, and that'll be an issue that's going to be a big deal for lots.
Thank you, Tom. Scott Mayer.
Hi, good morning. Scott Mayer, Bliss on Main Street. We've been muddling through since we are actually manufacturing sanitizers and soap, but as far as our brick and mortar location, we're not comfortable having face-to-face with the public until we can get a better handle on how to keep the premises itself sanitized, and the more data on how this disease is actually progressing. So I mean, in theory we could be open, but we're only doing online right now. So we're interested going forward to see how other businesses are managing the flow of once the public comes back out to and how it goes in salons, and how it has been going with curbside delivery from restaurants and things like that.
Well, thank you so much, Scott. Appreciate having you here. George.
Hi, everyone. George Chappell. I work with my wife, Susan, in her practice, Susan K. Chappell, CPA, as well as I do my own self-employed contracting business, mostly in the off season from tax season. So glad to see you all, and I'm anxious to hear how everybody's dealing with all this. I went into 2 stores today with my mask on. I was proud to wear my mask, which I have been all along, but it was I noticed how comforting it was that now pretty much everyone's wearing a mask, and it was just a little bit more, I don't know if it was just psychologically better, but it also just made me feel a little bit better. Thanks.
Thank you, George. Sarah, I'm sorry.
Hi guys.
Hey.
Sarah Bowden, Sugar Mags Candy on Main Street in Ellsworth. I did a curbside. We did our first big scheduled curbside pickup on Wednesday, and it went wonderfully. I posted a sign that said, "I've got kiddos inside, and we're not going to have anybody enter, even with masks. For now, that's my choice." I feel like one of the issues I'm going to battle is, Marguerite saying hi, is dealing with an old building in Maine, which is not going to be super easy to kind of make me feel comfortable with ventilation and sanitation and all those types of things, especially with my little sticky fingers of candy for the shorter variety. So I was really happy with kind of people being able to respect that. Everybody had masks on. We had a no contact Tupperware that was sanitized. We did some things like that were kind of fun that I think would be kind of fun to share with other people on Main Street. Like, we kind of set up soda, and we made it so that people could still be able to pick what they wanted through the window and through the doors, which was really kind of fun. We did it through cell phones, and people still got to pick what they wanted, but they didn't come inside, and we felt a little bit safer, which worked out great for us. It was a kind of trial run, but I felt successful in phases of moving forward in an area that I'm very unsure. So that's my big update. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Sarah. Manager Cole?
Everyone hear me?
Yes.
Good. David Cole, City Manager. I guess working on a plan to reopen City Hall. Nothing official yet. We'll be discussing it with the City Council on Monday night. But we are putting plexiglass in place where it's needed in the clerk's office and the tax office, and also marking out the building and making sure we have sufficient space. And department by department, we're working on individual plans of how to gradually phase people back into the building, hopefully over the next month. Our thought is initially reopen 2 days a week, and like Tuesday and Friday, maybe even extended hours going till 6 o'clock, you know, in recognition of the fact there may be a number of people that need to get their cars registered or whatever. So we're working on that and much more.
Thank you so much for that update. David, will that information be publicized via Facebook or some other social media outlets, and maybe at the beginning of the emergency council meeting on Monday night?
It will be publicized when it's ready.
Oh, okay, I see.
It's not going to be, as I say, we're going to be discussing it with the council.
Okay.
And, you know, they may have some ideas on how it's done. Again, we're easing into this. I expect to see things happening in the next couple of weeks, but we're making sure we have all the necessary precautions in place and able to do it in an orderly way. But I think that would be a good sign for the public to see City Hall open again, as limited as it may be initially, but hopefully work toward a transition over the coming weeks.
Great, thank you.
And it will certainly publicize it once it's in place.
Excellent. Phyllis Young?
I'm Phyllis Young. I'm president of the board for Heart of Ellsworth and interim director at Woodlawn Museum here in town. We are meeting this afternoon while meeting with my board and our croquet court chairman. We have a multifaceted business. The public park has remained open. Our croquet court is needing to be figured out. I did pull off the golf course guidance because there was no real guidance for that, but that was very helpful to have that. We also have a United States Croquet Association has played in, you know, to protocol that they're putting out nationwide. We have to think about opening the Black House when that would be appropriate. And there's no real guidance lists for that particular kind of business, but there were some other things on the other guidance that was helpful for that too. And, you know, we also have a community garden, and we have, you know, the antique show, which, you know, right now looks like we need to cancel that, but we do have people that think that things might change there. So that's been kind of an issue that we're trying to work with to get everybody on the same page. And yeah, I mean, we're able to work independently at home, and so that's great. And you know, so things are running fairly smoothly, but I want to hear what guidance is for all kinds of things. So thanks for having it.
Thank you, Phyllis. Nate Hansen?
Hello, this is Nate Hansen. I'm also a board member on the Heart of Ellsworth, and I run Pinniped Kayak, which is a kayak construction company. So my thoughts this week, I've been impressed and thought that the state's level of organization with the reopening plan is really helpful. And I've been hearing that from other businesses that I've been corresponding with, where of course, you know, it's pretty rough to not have a tourist season as it seems, but certainly understand how we've gotten where we are. The industry specific guidelines, I think, have really been a good move, and we've gotten those as guides because we're one of the businesses that's allowed to open this month. Without customers, it's kind of a moot point for my particular business. I wanted to just give a quick shout out that Nicole Grohowski, our state representative, and Louie Luchini, our senator, have been really helpful with both some specific questions and just generally helping out in the community. So big thanks to them.
Thank you, Nate. Heidi.
And in the stage 3 guidance, there's that idea about testing, allowing visitors to possibly use lodging in Maine, and that's a huge question that that I know myself and a few people have, what that would look like.
Thank you, Nate. Heidi would be Heidi next.
Hi, everybody. Heidi Stanton-Drew, The Artful Aid. Happy to see you all. Really grateful for these meetings. And I'm going to just be short today. So just thank you for these. These are incredibly helpful. Bye.
Thank you, Heidi. Let's see who, oh, everybody moved around. Lori Johnson, I think you're next.
Hi, so I am the program director for Hospice Volunteers of Hancock County. And we have really shifted the work we are doing, and because we are not able to visit our hospice patients in person. And I just want everybody here to know that we are doing we shifted our services to be more around advanced care planning and helping people get that done, as well as providing more grief and support for individuals by phone and by Zoom. And so that is open to anybody in the community, you personally or anybody within your organizations. And also I want to say thank you to Tom Biel. I sent you an email yesterday, and I just want to say thank you so much for your support of our organization, and as well as our volunteer. Tom helped us with a donation for a volunteer to receive an iPad so that this volunteer could be in communication with his hospice patients through FaceTime and Zoom. And it's so important to be able to have that face-to-face contact with our hospice patients. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much, Lori, for being with us this week. Welcome. Leslie Harlow.
Grind building downtown, where we have 10 to 14 tenants, depending on how we look at it. And I'm also the owner of Ironbound Restaurant in Hancock. I am also a HACCP certified and trained person. So I happen to know a lot about sanitation and disinfectants and all the things that are now going to be required. I am very concerned about with the Maine Grind building, because we haven't really gotten any guidance from the state yet with buildings that have like one entrance and having a number of businesses in it. Fortunately for all of us, fortunately and unfortunately, but at least retail and restaurants are going to be open on the same date, which is June 1st. But when I think about like what Tom brought up, public bathrooms, sanitation, one entrance, social distancing, how many people are we allowed in the building at one time? It's a little overwhelming. And we are, obviously waiting for guidance from the state. In regards to hospitality industry, it employs 100,000 people here in Maine. It's one of the biggest generators for sales tax. And as of today, we still haven't gotten really good guidelines by the state. And there are people that are planning on opening June 1st. And there are many people that are aggressively going to be doing takeout during this month of May. My business will not be one of them. We're going to open on June 10th. But I think we have a lot of questions that need to be answered. And I think that whatever the city, the chamber, Heart of Ellsworth can do to help define and create some outlines for public behavior and for what the expectations are from owners of buildings would be very, very helpful. And I happen to know a lot of stuff because of my own training in the seafood business. So if there's any way I can be of help, I'm certainly willing to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Leslie. Elsie Flemings.
Hi, this is Elsie Flemings, Executive Director of Healthy Acadia. We're a community health organization serving primarily Hancock and Washington counties. We have 2 offices in Ellsworth and then some offices in Washington County as well. And we are do a broad range of community health work, which we have been able to pivot to primarily online, some with very strict social, physical distancing, et cetera. So we've been able to keep that programming up and running, and also add new services as the need arises. So if anybody has any sort of needs that come up, health questions or community resource needs that you're recognizing, let me know. And the other thing that I'm really interested in terms of COVID response is, and have been fortunate to be in some increasing conversations at the state level and local level around thinking about what we can proactively do to really ramp up a sort of forward-thinking response, sort of building up infrastructure, public health infrastructure, but both around testing and contact tracing that would enable us to more safely open and sort of support you all with safety, as well as a stronger, a more open economy to support the businesses, but in a safe way. And so there are those conversations emerging, and I'm cautiously hopeful that we can make progress on that, so that things like the 14-day quarantine for visitors, could be modified if we have the right kind of testing and contact tracing in place. So initial stages, but I'm here to be a resource if I can be. But thanks for inviting me.
Elsie, thank you. And I think that was a perfect natural segue from what Leslie Harlow had to say about a group getting together to work on guidelines for how we can reopen safely. And so maybe that's kind of part of the key. So thank you for that. Paul Marcosian.
Hi, I'm Paul Marcosian, co-owner with my wife Lorena of Flexit Cafe and Bakery, as well as Finn's Irish Pub. I'd like to say, first of all, it was great to see Marguerite, Sarah's daughter. I love seeing her across the street and waving to her and saying, "Hi, Marguerite." And I just wanted to say it was nice to see you briefly in this Zoom meeting. I miss seeing lots of people. This is really hard. But we are actually in the process of planning some reopening at both restaurants. Next week, we're planning on opening Flexit to do takeout, curbside, and in another week or so, doing the same with Finn's. We applied for PPP loans this week for both businesses, and we were approved. We just learned this morning. So we're working with a local bank, Bangor Savings, and I know all the local banks are doing a great job with this. And we're just now, our challenge is to proceed, make sure we follow all the rules so that we can make the best use of these funds. We're also trying to give some support to some of my employees who have been unemployed and most of them have successfully filed for unemployment, but there's a few who have gotten tripped up somewhere. Now they certainly will qualify, but like one, they've been waiting 6 weeks to try to resolve issues. They can't get through to anybody. So that's been a challenge. And if anyone has any tips on how to get through, that would be great to know. And I guess that's about it.
Well, thank you, Paul. It's nice to see your face as well. So thank you for being here. Next up is John Stein.
Hey everybody, John Stein. I'm a board member of Heart of Ellsworth and owner of Fogtown Brewing Company here in Ellsworth. We have been in business as an essential business, so we've been producing, but obviously not with doors open. We're packed into the restaurant category, so we would be in that stage 2 opening. We're working right now on figuring out outdoor seating. We're working with Maine Brewers Guild and the legislature to see what that might look like for tourists or other people to sit physically distanced outdoors and for them to somehow drink beer. We're also doing deliveries and curbside pickup and linking up with other local businesses to deliver and offer their food as well with our beer for deliveries.
Thank you, John. Nice to see you as well. And let's see. Rachel, welcome, Rachel. Nice to.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me. studio. I just opened in December, so closing in March, financially not good. The vast majority of my kids are under the age of 6, so I don't know where I fall in reopening, and I don't know how I'll keep them separated because they're so little.
Thank you, Rachel. Good to hear those concerns. That helps sort of direct who we have on the call and what sorts of questions we address. So thank you for that. Nick from the Grand, and I think you're last, Nick. So we're just on time if you go quickly.
I'm gonna go very
Thank you, Nick.
I'm
Thank
going very
you.
quickly.
Thank you, Nick.
I filled out the census. I filled out all the surveys. The only concern I have right now is it looks obviously that the Grand is in phase 4. And that doesn't really help very much at all. Yeah.
Thank you, Nick, and well said again. Hopefully we can get some answers and hopefully maybe change that reality or push the change of that reality a little bit further along. Again, thank you all for being here. And I also just want to say thank you again to Machias Savings Bank for making this program possible for Heart of Ellsworth to produce. We have a wonderful partnership with Machias Savings Bank. They have been very supportive of Heart of Ellsworth for quite a few years and have recently stepped up with quite a bit more support. So we're incredibly heartfelt thankful for that. So to that, I'm going to introduce Bobbi Jo Thorton. She's going to discuss the payroll protection plan, and Bobbi Jo is VP of Business Banking for Machias Savings Bank. So Bobbi Jo, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I am here to talk about the Paycheck Protection Program. It's consumed our world in the banking industry for the past several weeks. I feel, in the beginning, there was a lot of unknowns. At this point, I feel very confident if there was someone that needed to apply today, that we could answer your questions. We've got a streamlined process. There's funding available. Right now, we've got a 1 to 2 day turnaround time as far as when you apply to when you have your money. So if you know of anyone out there that hasn't applied yet, encourage them to please apply now. There is still funding available, and we're ready and willing to help. With that said, all the focus has been on rolling out the program. Now that people have their funds, there's lots of questions around, okay, how can I spend this money? What kind of paperwork are you going to need to be able to forgive this at the end of the time frame? That's where we're back to, I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns still. We are waiting on more guidance from SBA as far as getting the details. But what I can give you today is an overview, maybe kind of a guideline to help us navigate the interim until we do have some more details on that. So the program is designed to give you funds for payroll for 8 weeks. So when you applied for the loan, you took your average payroll for last year and multiplied that figure by 2.5. So that ultimately gives you about 2 months of payroll, plus a little bit extra to cover some business expenses. So what we advise people to do is take the amount of funds that you got from your bank and multiply that to spend at least 75% on payroll in order for this to be forgiven. And then you've got the other 25% figure. And that 25% can be used for mortgage interest payments, rent, and utilities. So then you've got those 2 buckets. So you know you've got to meet those 2 requirements. The other requirement is that in order for your loan to be forgiven, you cannot reduce your number of employees or decrease their wages. Now, I will take a step back and say that forgiveness can be prorated. It doesn't mean none of it's going to be forgiven. So there will be a formula, which hopefully we will determine soon on what that will look like. But the idea is that you keep everyone employed and keep them at the same rate of pay. As far as timing goes, you have 8 weeks from the time you get the money to spend it. So if I got the money today, today is when the clock would start ticking, and I would have 8 weeks from today to use those funds. At the end of that 8 weeks is when you will then take all of your receipts and evidence of payroll, provide them to your financial institution to request forgiveness. And there is a 60-day window in which to complete that process. More details to come on that. So as far as understanding what qualifies for business expenses, we do encourage you to work with your tax person, your accountant, your CPA. They are well-versed on what would qualify. We are recommending people as far as utilities. What does the IRS allow for utilities to be deducted on your tax return? So that's kind of a guideline on what those utilities would look like to qualify for the forgiveness expense. Make sure you keep a paper trail of all your expenses. Just a couple more notes. If you have some money left over, let's say, you know, with a delay in opening your business, payroll, you're not going to be able to use that full 75%. Maybe there's a portion of the funds you didn't get to use. You can do a couple of things with that. You can use that, those funds that you didn't get to use and pay the loan back. So the part that wouldn't be forgiven because you didn't get to use it, you'd pay that back to the bank. Or if you needed to hang on to those funds for operating, you could hang on to them, and then the unforgiven part of your loan would stay as a loan. It would be a 2-year loan, no payments for 6 months, and the interest rate is only 1%. So it really is some attractive financing if you do need to keep those funds for another purpose. And my last note that I'd like to make today, which is super important, because we've been seeing this recently, if you received any of the economic injury disaster loan advance funds, which was up to $10,000, you got $1,000 per employee. Those are starting to pop up in people's checking accounts unannounced. If you received any of those funds, the current guideline is that proceeds from any of that advance loan will be deducted from the loan forgiveness amount of your PPP loan. That's all I have for guidance at this point. I don't know if you use those for a different purpose, if that'll later be forgiven, but as of right now, that will be deducted from your PPP loan forgiveness.
Bobbi Jo, we've had a couple of questions come in, and since we're doing good on time, one of them was, will there be a link to the formula that you were talking about earlier?
That's a great question. I do know some accountants have been putting together some spreadsheets. I have not seen one of those yet. I just learned of it this morning during a different conference call. I know at Machias Savings Bank, as we get this information, we'll be rolling it out on our website, and we are sharing e-blast info emails to anyone that has a PPP loan with us. So I'd say be on the lookout for more info there.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then one other question was, and I think you sort of answered this, but if utilities would be covered under the PPP and which utilities it is. And I think you stated that it was utilities that are tax deductible typically on your tax return.
Yes, that's what we're giving people for guidance. We don't have an exact list, but we're saying, you know, whatever is deductible according to the IRS, use those as guidelines for now. Okay. This is all subject to adjustments by the SBA and the government.
Said with a smile. Thank you for that. Yes. Thank you so much, Bobbi Jo. And if there are any other questions, feel free, folks, please, to stick them in the chat feature, and we will make sure that they are answered offline, or if we have time online, and directly to one of our 3 presenters or whoever else is the right channel for that. So thank you very much, Bobbi Jo. Moving on, Shannon Byers from SBDC and CEI. She's going to speak today about pandemic unemployment assistance. So thank you, Shannon, for being with us today.
Thank you, Cara. Happy to be here. I thought I would share a little bit on the unemployment because it has opened up today for self-employed and other individuals. So I thought it would be of interest. I'm not an expert on unemployment, so I will share what I've learned in the last couple of days from the Department of Labor and from some of our folks at CEI that are watching this closely. So I think I'll share my screen just to share a couple of resources that you can follow up with for more information. Let's see here. Okay, so the first one, and many of you probably have seen this already, but this is a checklist to talk about who's covered and who's not covered. And so it's a pretty extensive list. This file is at the Department of Labor's website. The PDF link is there, and I can also share it in the chat.
Thank you,
so
Shannon.
you can have that. If you are looking to apply, you go to the Department of Labor website. There's this register button here. When you click that, it brings up, this menu, and you'll click this create re-employ me account to set up your account. And then there's some other functions here. So I direct you to this if you're planning to enroll. Of Cynthia Murphy, who some of you remember from a couple of weeks ago. She's put together a new video going over the benefits specifically for self-employed workers. So you guys can go to those. I'll put those links in the chat, and then I'll just go over the high-level details. So the enrollment opened today, and it's retroactive. So I'm going to give you some dates. It's retroactive to back to when you started to experience economic impact to your wages. And it's back to, in Maine, for most people, that's going to be March 15th. It can be extended to February 2nd in some instances with documentation. So for instance, if you attend a lot of trade shows with your product and some of those trade shows in other states were canceled, you can make a claim, that you were experiencing a deduction or a reduction in wages back as far as February 2nd. The benefit will run until up to December 26th. So it's going to be available until then. The period from March 29th to July 26th, there'll be a benefit of an extra $600 per week. And so what they're doing, today it opens up. Anybody that goes in, you're going to attest that you've experienced an economic reduction in wages, and they're going to give you the minimum benefit. The minimum benefit is going to be $142 a week, plus the $600 for that window. And this is all retroactive. Now, so everybody gets the minimum to start. And then what they're going to do near the end of May, they're going to come back and ask for documentation. So your taxes, other financials, and they're going to make an adjustment to your numbers. And the maximum benefit that somebody can receive is $445 a week. So they'll figure out where you fit in there and adjust your benefit accordingly. Now, one of the questions coming up is, what if we receive the PPP? Like, how does that fit into all of this? So if you're self-employed and you're planning to pay yourself, or you are paying yourself PPP, you can still go in to apply for the retroactive piece that you've missed, pay yourself for the PPP for 8 weeks, and then after that 8-week period, if you still need the benefit, continue to receive it. What they recommended was that once you're signed up, that you continue to go in and do your weekly claims, even during that 8-week period that you're on the PPP. And so you'll put in how much you're paying yourself with the PPP loan, and they'll say, oh, they're making their normal wage, we're not going to give them anything this week. But what that does is keeps your account active. And so when the 8 weeks runs out, you're good to go. You just go back in and do your claim. So those are the kind of high level details. Once you get in and log into the system, I don't know how the system works. I can't answer questions on that. I do know that you can call the Department of Labor, but you can also call the career centers. Those centers are being staffed with people that can answer some questions. I think if you get locked out of your account, they can help with that sort of thing. So with that, I'll take questions and try to answer them best I can.
Thank you, Shannon. If anyone does have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and to speak up. I haven't had any in the Zoom group chat, so thank you, Shannon, for putting the link up there as well. And I also will put that link in the follow-up email with a lot of other links that we'll be sending out. So
I'll make a comment. I do know that myself today went on to, as far as self-employment, and the website is crashed. You can't
Yeah.
get,
So
I've tried all morning.
Yeah. So they're, I think they pretty much expected it was going to crash.
Right. But Shannon, do I understand this right, that you only have till tomorrow night at midnight to sign up?
No. So you only have until tomorrow night in order to get this week's benefit, right? So if you get signed up before Saturday, I want to say 8 p.m. Again, until next week, you're still going to get the benefit that
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we did have one other question come in. Any heads up on existing UEI claims that have run out or current benefits? Scott, I might ask you for a little bit more clarification. So if you want to unmute yourself and maybe ask your question.
Yeah, if you already had a seasonal unemployment claim and in the midst of all this, it runs out, the current Labor Department page says, don't file for extended benefits because the feds haven't issued any advice on that yet. And I just wondered if anybody else had heard that, if there's any actual update on that, because the $600 supplement does appear, but if you look at account, your claim account, it's based on a previous work season. In my case, it's appropriate because prior to Ellsworth, I have a seasonal business in Bar Harbor for which this claim applies, and it's about to run out. So I just wondered, since we won't be opening until June or July, if there's any updated advice on that portion, or if the feds just aren't communicating that yet.
Yeah, it's a good question, Scott. I don't know the answer. So the unemployment that you're on now, you're an employee, so you're a W-2 for your seasonal business in Bar Harbor. Nope, I think you're muted. There you go.
Yes, I'm one of the employees on a W-2 schedule.
All right, so you have unemployment for that, but now today unemployment opens for self-employed. So I wonder if you can have a separate claim for your new business. I think that's a question for them. I don't know the answer.
I'll just give one little information that I learned, although we have not received any unemployment or either person in my household yet, and it's been hugely challenging, that you can have a little bit better luck on Fridays, typically before noon, but probably not this Friday with all the stuff that's opening up today. But I was told that they are manning the lines even on weekends now, and before noon is a better time to reach someone. We literally have been online hours and hours just hitting redial trying to get through to a person, but we've reached one person once. And to do the retroactive piece that you were speaking of, Shannon, we literally had to have a supervisor go in and put in information to make it retroactive. and she explained that the forms that are online are forms that they had for regular unemployment claims. There isn't really a particular form for COVID-19 for individuals, not self-employed borrowers. So I hope the forms for because this is unique, having a self-employed person be able to apply. Hopefully those forms are a little more tailored to this situation, because the forms for regular people, the questions that were asked were not, you almost have to answer in error, because you have to say, am I available to work? And say yes, not no, even though you're not really available to work because of the circumstance. So there's a lot to applying and a lot to getting it to flow correctly. But hopefully, I know they're trying to open up they've hired 100 more people to answer phones, and they're trying their
And
best.
they have, according to the webinar yesterday, they have streamlined the process for
Right.
self-employed. So if you plan to have your just basic information, social security, contact information.
And I think that's absolutely important, Shannon, because the woman also, the supervisor, did tell me that you definitely want to put in your direct deposit information, because if you are going to be paid any other way, like through the mail or anything like that, that adds 4 to 6 weeks onto the process.
So we have to, I'm sorry to cut this part of it short. We were supposed to end now, but we have 2 more people that we need to hear from, one being Louie Luchini and then the other being Dale Hamilton. I'm actually going to have Dale speak first and hopefully concisely about the special council meeting, and then that will lead into Louie's, and we're going to have to wrap up in probably 4 minutes. So if we can, Dale, if you could please speak.
Sure. I'll be very quick. So I've heard from a lot of businesses, had a chance to participate in calls like this since the announcement of the phased-in approach. A lot of concerns from businesses in terms of that there is a lot of more questions than answers in terms of the approach. There's a lot of concerns about some of the criteria and and you heard it on this call, why one business can open and another can't. And so in terms of the information, even the day after the commissioner spoke and said that they really, I think the quote was, I think we may have misunderstood the complexity of the business side. So there are a lot of questions. And so on Monday, during our special council meeting, we are going to take up this issue. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to debate whether or not we want to, as a city, send something formal to the governor to try to support businesses in getting some of these answers, getting some of these questions answered, and applying some of that. There's a lot of lacking of the criteria. I don't know how you can have a phased-in approach when you don't provide the specific measures that you're looking at to move those phases. The day after, the Commissioner Johnson also said that that there was the possibility after they didn't say this during the meeting, but during the press conference, that they could be in different parts of the state could open up sooner. And certainly Hancock County, with only 2 active cases, 10 total, would certainly fall into that. So lots of questions, and what I would encourage you to do is to join. It will be broadcast. Comments can be made. If you want to reach out to me in advance with your thoughts, the more information that we have, the better decisions we can make. But the short of it is that there's still a lot of questions, and we feel like the council should put that forward in a formal manner to get some of these answers.
We will be publicizing and sending all of you a link to into Monday night's meeting, again in our closing email this afternoon. So stay tuned for that. And Louie, thank you so much for being here. And if you could give us, thanks.
Sure, thanks. Good to see everybody. And I'll be really as quick as I can and then try to take questions. And you can call me or contact me after if you have other questions. And actually just shot out an email to Cara that hopefully she can forward on with tons of links to Janet's proposal, as well as the PUA stuff that Shannon just went over. So obviously, as everybody knows, the governor rolled out on Tuesday her I think it's Restarting Maine's Economy document, as well as a Stay Safer at Home order, which is essentially the same as the current or the old order as of yesterday. But it does add a few new businesses to the list of what can be done. As Dale just highlighted, we've heard from tons of businesses with opinions on all sides of the spectrum on this. I think one of the most important things that you can do is tell the department and the governor what you think by submitting. They have a special website just for business owners, and it's for their input. So if you submit how you could open, any type of protocols that you think would be good for businesses, they would be able to use that to adapt to some of the checklist stuff that's going through. And as the governor said, you know, she provided these advanced stages to be something of a framework for planning purposes. As was earlier pointed out by Elsie, if we're able to do things like testing or contact tracing or new innovative plans significantly. So in that email, I gave you the link to the governor. You can obviously contact me anytime. And as Gretchen said, the chamber's putting together a business survey, which is also hugely important because the chamber's compiling all of this for the business community to work hand in hand with DECD and the governor to make changes. So as they go forward, they're going to be looking at the health metrics, fairly similar to what the White House recommended on the trends within the symptoms of COVID or influenza-like illnesses. And, you know, things like rural businesses, they're going to take into account that we could potentially find a way to open certain types of businesses faster. The way that it looks like it's going to work based on the press conference, and I'll say the legislature received this at the same time as the public. So the department DECD will provide checklists for businesses, both a general format that applies to all, which is already available, and then industry specific guidelines. Some are directives and some operate as suggestions. Also on that page, which I sent in the link, in order to open your business, it appears you're going to have to fill out an online compliance form. It's a fairly short thing I went through, just a few things to say that you're going to do some health and safety precautions. And on that website, they have these optional badges, which you can print out and post on your windows or doors if you want, if you feel that would make your consumers feel like you've done the proper health and safety things as a pro-business type of move. So phase one starts today, and that's where we've got a number of new businesses, drive-in theaters. The governor's expanded healthcare guidance, golf courses, disc courses, as we've heard, barbershops and hair salons. I think, as Julie mentioned, was kind of a strange one to put in that group. And I've heard from people in the industry that it's difficult to open, primarily because you can't find PPE anywhere. We can't get enough for doctors and nurses. So it's a difficult challenge for salons to get it for their employees, and they're going to be directly in contact with people. There's dog grooming, auto dealerships, car washes. And then as we move through phases, phase two is in June, which is when restaurants can start opening, some of the hospitality. We still don't know the specifics on percentages. What we've seen in New Hampshire is they're going to open with 25%. I think one of the areas of opportunity for businesses, if possible, is to look at outdoor seating. I think the state will take a much more lax view on that if it follows what other states have done. And I know my committee's worked with the state and municipalities to increase the availability to have outdoor seating, liquor serving, those type of things. So hopefully that will help with businesses. Campgrounds, RV parks open on stage 2. And then just for the sake of time, where it's 1 o'clock, July, August is stage 3. this is where we've heard the most from businesses. It still maintains a prohibition on more than 50 people, but that, especially the 14-day quarantine on people entering, that's what we've heard the most about, because, you know, obviously people stay in hotels for 2 or 3 days and things like that. So from the hotels and inns, that's what we're trying to get more clarity from the governor. And as the commissioner said on the call, I think, which Dale referenced, you know, there's flexibility around that, hopefully. And if we can get more access to testing, that could just allow us to take in a lot more customers and open up. As Elsie mentioned, you know, there's a lot going on locally to try to do a regional approach to testing, since there's really very little guidance or leadership on that from the federal level. So I think with that, where it's 1 o'clock, I can stop and take questions, or people can call me, and I can try to help out with that.
As there are questions, please feel free to stick them in the chat feature, or you're more than welcome to email them directly to me, and I can link you directly to Louie if that's easiest for folks. But in the interest of time, I think that we're going to have to call the meeting. But again, I just want to thank you all. I will be sending along an email, hopefully later today, if not first thing tomorrow morning, with all of the links and a lot of the documents and some reminders in there too about important things coming up. But again, I thank you all for being on this call and for being an active part of your community and us working together to trying to find a way forward that works for the city of Ellsworth, and hopefully some of our initiatives will create models for others around the state. So I greatly appreciate all of your involvement and your commitment to coming to these meetings every week. Again, we had over 30 people at the height of the meeting on here, so that speaks volumes about all of you folks. So thank you so much. And I hope everybody enjoys weekend. We're supposed to get sun on Sunday, so thank you all, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.